This is truly an age-old question, but there is a new answer in 2025. Let's break this down so that you can figure out why your child will not practice. I'll give you a hint. It's not because they're not musical or not talented. Alright, I'm going to start this with the core common reasons that have been true for a long time, but bear restating, and then we'll get to the new reason that's happening in the modern world. The simplest, most straightforward, most obvious, but most common reason that your child is not practicing is because you have not scheduled time for practice. Especially now when most kids have quite a lot of activities and quite a lot of homework and quite a lot to do, they are busy. It is even more vitally important that you, their caregiver, schedules their time for practice. You have to decide when it's going to happen, or it won't happen. So I know you're already managing so much about your child's schedule and all the things that they're doing. I get it. But the thing is, you're investing in music lessons. And if your child doesn't practice, you're not making the best use of those music lessons. I don't like to ever lay guilt trips at parents' doors, okay? This is not about that. But at the same time, we music teachers have a responsibility to effectively get this across. This is not like other activities where you can just go to the thing and whatever happens in that hour or whatever it is per week is enough to move them forward. In music lessons, we really do require regular practice. Your child will still make some progress if they have a good teacher and they are not practicing, but it will be minimal. And a lot of the time they'll be treading water. They need to be practicing regularly because playing a music instrument is hard. It is really hard, okay? In most parts of the world, in most schools, they're also not doing a ton of music in school. So we're teaching them all of music. And if they just have one weekly lesson to do that and they don't follow up at home, they have forgotten much of what happened by the next week. So really sit down with your child and decide when practice is going to happen. Have a look at the full schedule. It probably won't be the same time every day, but try to tie it to something and have some kind of reminder for yourself. That can be just internal if you're someone who remembers things and is fairly time efficient yourself. Maybe you just decide that it comes before lunch or after dinner or whatever the case may be. If you know that you have a lot on your plate too, try setting a reminder on your phone, an alarm, or some other method of reminding yourself when it's supposed to happen. Because you have to be the one to hold your child to that routine. Reason number 2 why your child is not practicing. Your home instrument, their practice instrument, is not good enough. In some cases, and maybe this goes for you, parents want to start with like a starter instrument. In fact, something like you see behind me right here. The truth is, this is not a starter instrument. I wouldn't let any student of mine have this as their home instrument. It doesn't have weighted keys, it's not the full size, and so when the child is practicing on that at home, it is not satisfying. And furthermore, if they practice steadily on that at home and then come to their lesson, which has a real piano or proper digital piano, the process of that is too jarring. They're going from unweighted keys and smaller key sizes even and not having the full octaves. And then they're going to the studio where they're expected to play these big heavy keys. And it's really stressful. I mean, literally stressful on their hands because they're building up techniques that don't work on the real instrument. So I know it's an extra expense. I get it. But you can pick up a good instrument secondhand. It doesn't have to be new. And it doesn't have to be the most fancy instrument. But it does have to be something with a proper stand, pedals, and weighted keys so that they feel the satisfaction when they're practicing at home. And they can really enjoy their music and experience their music as it's meant to be played. This video is sponsored by Vibrant Music Teaching. Leave boredom, burnout, and imposter syndrome behind with vibrantmusicteaching.com. Access a library of games, courses, and tools to keep your students engaged and learning. Join a global community of music teachers and grow your skills with confidence. Sign up today and bring fresh energy to your lessons. The third reason comes down to the instrument at home as well, and that's a different one. Maybe the instrument is fine, but where it is not fine. I know all about this. We generally, in the area I live in, have pretty small houses, so there's often not a bunch of different locations that a piano can go. However, if you have any flexibility on where to put the instrument, do think about where it is. Is it somewhere where there's a conflict in the family? Another sibling wants to watch TV or use the iPad, and that's the iPad room, or whatever the case may be. There's conflict happening, even if it's not literally coming out, even if they're not having a literal fight. Maybe the child who's studying music doesn't want to bother older or younger sibling who wants to use that room, or their mum or dad who's working in that space, right? It could also be that that space is too quiet and isolated from the rest of their house, or too loud. This was my problem growing up because my piano was in the kitchen. There was a lot of distracting noise, and I honestly found it pretty stressful sometimes to get my practice in when other stuff was going on around me. Is there a possibility of thinking about the environment and talking to your child about how that feels when they're practicing, whether they sometimes feel lonely or overly stimulated when they're trying to get their practice in? Reason number 4, before we get to the uniquely modern one, is that they don't know what to do or how to do it, and that's stressful. So if that's the case, there are 2 things you can do. First of all, talk to your teacher. Make sure that you understand what your child is supposed to be practicing and how they're supposed to be doing it, and that you have some kind of notes for that your child can understand. It's also useful to go through those notes directly after the lesson when everything's still fresh on your child's mind. So when they come home from piano, look at the assignment list together, whether your teacher uses an app or a notebook or anything else, and talk about, oh hey, you're doing this piece, what's that like? Just a few minutes spent talking about it will help your child remember better what they're supposed to do, and will also fill you in while it's still fresh on their mind. Alongside that, it may be really useful for you to sit beside them during practice time to help them understand the directions, to follow through on them, and maybe also so they feel more included in the family, get to spend time with you, their favorite thing, right? For some children, just sitting beside them is enough. They just want the company and the assurance of you being there. And for others, they want you to walk them through everything they're supposed to be doing. Here's the new reason that's come up in the last few years. Why is your child not practicing? They won't practice. They're fighting with you about it in 2025. I'm sorry to say it because we blame everything on this, but it's screens. If you have scheduled the time to practice and you're making sure they know what they're supposed to be practicing and you're sure your home instrument is excellent, what are they doing before their practice? And what are they doing before their lesson? Are you, and this is a judgment-free zone, okay? But are you driving over to their piano lesson with your child glued to an iPad, playing a game? Are you putting their screen time directly before when they're supposed to practice? Or does it even come after they're supposed to practice? All of these can cause conflict. Look, being inside a screen, as it feels like they are when they are absorbed by it in a certain way, it's a different mode for their brain. It's a different way of being. When we are in that digital world, especially a game world, but including fast-paced videos, our brain is hopped up on all sorts of natural hormonal chemicals. They're firing around our brain. And so, when your child, who is not developmentally really ready to handle this onslaught of information, is taken out of that world and put at a piano, or told to get off that thing and go practice piano, chances are they're not going to want to do it. And it's not because they hate their instrument. It's not because it's boring or they're not talented or not into music, because all children are musical. It is because of where they are, where their head is when they're in that environment. Similarly, it might be that screen time comes directly after practice time, just by happenstance of your schedule. And they feel like if they get out of the practice, they get to jump to the screen time. Even if that's never been true, it might have that feeling. Because once I get through this, I get to that. So they might not want to do their practice at all, or they might not want to do all of their practice because they feel like then screen time will come faster. And it's a bit addictive, so I get why they want to rush to it. Another less common one, but has come up for us, is that the instrument, the piano, is in something like a playroom or a rec room. And it happens to be that there's also a rule that iPads are only allowed to be played in that room. And so if they associate those two things together, the piano is kind of getting in the way of the time they could be on their device, because that's what they associate that room with. So just unpack some of what's going on around the practice. And it doesn't have to be a screen. Like, this happens in a less extreme, usually, way with other activities that your child loves or is really, really involved in. So they're in the middle of a science experiment. They're in the middle of drawing a new picture. They're in the middle of their English homework and it's their favorite subject. And we're taking them out of that and making this association of you can't do your favorite thing because you have to do this thing. And therefore, their brain makes a connection, I don't like this thing. Even if that's not really the case. When a child says they don't like practicing or don't like their instrument, it's usually not about the instrument or about the practicing itself. It's usually about something else that's going on around that, and we have to dig a bit deeper. Okay, let me have it. Have you got an issue that was not addressed here? I would love to hear why your child won't practice.